Hello, everybody. My encouragement today comes from Psalm 90. If I were going to give a title to the psalm, I think I would make it a question. Where did the time go? I know I ask that question often at the end of the week or the end of the month, and a lot of us are asking that question about the last 3 months or 4 months. Where did the time go? This pandemic has made every day for some folks seem like the same. It's a kind of a recurring Groundhog Day. So that when we wake up in the morning and end the day with no weekend or no church or no school or no routine, where did the time go becomes a question for a lot of us. The reality is Moses was reflecting on a similar thing, apparently at the end of his life, when he writes these words in Psalm chapter 90. So I want to share some concepts from Moses, from the scriptures about time and what we need to think about it, how we need to manage it in these days. Verses 1 through 4 in Psalm 90 makes it very clear that Moses sees God as beyond time. He's not bound by time. In fact, what he writes is, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth from the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Remember, Moses said to God when he was standing before the burning bush, who shall I say is sending me? And God said, well, tell him I am is sending you. The one who is beyond time, the creator of all things, who was in the beginning when time began, the God whose rule includes things that take place in time so that his purposes can be fulfilled. No, time matters to God, and time is created by God. He gives to us the responsibilities to be stewards of our own time. Second concept is in verse 5 and 6, where Moses reflects on just how brief time is. Even if we live a long life, it goes by quickly. In fact, the psalmist Moses writes, you sweep men away in the sleep of death. They're like new grass in the morning, though in the morning it springs up new, by evening it is dry and withered. I liken time to a dandelion. I've never seen a plant grow so fast and change so quickly as a dandelion. One day it's a bud, and the next day it's a flower. It seems the next day it's seeds blowing away in the wind. That's the way life is. Young people can't wait for the next birthday. Those of us who get to be our age begin to say, I don't think I want another birthday. But given the alternatives, I think it's probably a good idea. Time goes by quickly. The length of their days is 70 years or 80 if we have the strength, but it goes quickly. Third concept is our lives are full of trouble. He writes that. He writes that in verse 10, their span is but trouble and sorrow. So while we live our lives here on the earth, we live it in the context of a sin-crushed world. And we find it goes by quickly, but we often find that our time is trouble. It's not all fun and games. He reflects on that. Then he goes on to say there are things we need to keep in mind in light of these three things, and there are probably more in this passage, but I would give you these three things. The first one is in verse 12. So teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. We are stewards of time. We are called, as Ephesians says, to make the most of every opportunity. So when we think that way, we need to make the best of our sleep time. We need to sleep on time and prepare us for a day ahead that we need the energy in. We need to be sure in our awake time that we are not wasting it on things like roots of bitterness growing up. So we make the best of our time by forgiving and asking for forgiveness and doing what we can to make the culture and the world a better place. His kingdom on earth as it is in heaven is a good use of time. And we stay away from evil, which only becomes a time destroyer and a life waster. So teach us to number our days aright. We only have so many of them. Lord, help us to make the best of them. The second thing I would point you to is the reality of the need to depend on God's grace to make the best of our time. That's in verse 14. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Let me be joyful in my life. Let me make the best of my time, even in the midst of trouble, by singing your praise and seeing your glory at work in the midst of it. For when I'm weak, then you are strong. When my life fades away, God's glory grows in strength and honor. Dr. Benjamin Elias Mays is the president of Morehouse College, and he wrote this classic poem. It's called Life, Just a Minute. Here's the way it goes. Life is just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon you, can't refuse it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it. You must suffer if you lose it. Give an account if you abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Where did the time go, we ask? Well, Lord, would you teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom, and by your grace be joyful every moment of our day. May the Lord challenge you today, encourage you today to make the most and have the biggest blessing in your time with the Lord. Amen.